Salutations, thinkers and drinkers. In this case, thinking is going to hopefully support my argument, and if it doesn't, you're going to need to be drinking. What I'm about to discuss may just flummox the mind. It certainly flummoxed my mind. A thought occurred to me the other day. Shall I start that sentence again? A thought occurred to me the other day when I was recording my almost hagiographical account of my opinions on Judas Priest. And I mentioned at the time that when we're talking about hard rock, heavy metal, it is spawned. It's been broken down into this myriad of subcategories and sub-genres, all with increasingly ridiculous and pointless names. And I sort of mentioned at the time how ridiculous I found that, and how non-helpful, shall we say, I found that. Underneath, we're talking about heavy metal, hard rock. It's an umbrella, and yes, there's going to be variance within that. But let me carry on. It seems, however, though, it's a human failing, isn't it? We seem to desperately need to put a label on everything and anything. Now, sometimes this does make sense, but other times it just means it just seems like it's an act of intellectual masturbation for somebody. It feels like that. They're desperately trying to restore order in their sock drawer after a particularly apocalyptic washing cycle or something. It's activity for its own sake, rather than helping to get the thought process of the conversation to some definite end or some definite conclusion or somewhere further down the road. I mean, do they do it? Do we? I mean, we're all guilty of it. Do we do it because we wish to appear clever? Or is it just an excuse so we can, bicker and argue with other people that they have not understood the subtleties of my classification, or the nuances of my definitions? It's just an excuse to exchange virtual punches online. I don't know. It happens. It probably always has happened. It's just with the advent of the internet, this thing seems to be out of control. Or it's maybe just me. I don't know. I don't follow these things religiously. Sort of developments, even within the genres of music I like. I tend to be one of those who likes what he likes, kind of sticks to that, doesn't listen to much else. The last new development, or the last band, should I say, that was new at the time, that I really got into, was Nightwish. That's almost 30 years ago now. So, a lot of these bands and genres I'm about to mention, I have to be honest, it's the result of some academic research rather than any in-depth, intimate knowledge of the music contained therein. But that's not really the point, is it? And there is some point, obviously. I mean, you can't just. It's not great for debate, is it? If somebody asks you, "Do you like music?" and you say, "Yes, I like music," and leave the sentence hanging in the air, as it were. Because classical music is not jazz, it's not rock and roll, it's not pop. So these descriptors, these categories, if you like, do make sense. But it's perfectly conceivable, perfectly possible, perfectly normal for one to like classical music but not to like jazz, or to like jazz and not to like pop, or to like pop and not to like rock. Yes, and I don't think anybody would object to that with that argument, or find any weakness in it. It is what it is. And some of these are quite catchy. I mean, rock and roll is, again, and I mentioned this in the other video, even when it came to thrash, you kind of understood what they were talking about, because these are, very, very distinctive, very onomatopoeic descriptors. But, as within many things in life, over-analysis can be deadly, and you very much run the risk of losing sight of any objective goal you may have had, that this exercise may have had. It's fine subdividing music into classical jazz. Yes, because we all know what that means, and we can make the mental leap and understand that some people may like some, not others, etc., etc. But what I'm about to talk about, I think, is just absolute insanity. All right, I asked AI to give me a list of all the subgenres that fall under the umbrella of hard rock and heavy metal, and it said it found 43. Well, fucking talking about that, all of those I don't think. So I said, well, give me the juicy ones. So it produced a list of 24. Now, that's more subcategories of a very niche type of music, I have to say, already. That's more subcategories than most politicians have brain cells. So I said I asked it to give me a list of the juicy ones as opposed to the obvious ones, but we're going to, yeah, let's just go through them. And I'm hoping you may agree with me that some of these labels, descriptors, whatever you want to call them, are about as useful as a window on a submarine. Let's go. All right, we start with traditional hard rock. This is fine. It morphed from rock and roll. It became rock, and then as 1969 onwards, it became heavier hard rock. Fine, that's fine, no problem. Think Deep Purple, think Uriah Heep, think Led Zeppelin. Yes, okay, makes sense. From that came heavy metal. Again, I don't know. I mean, this is just one of those things. A lot of people see it as almost as an insult, as a pejorative term. I think even Tony Iommi or other members of Black Sabbath would balk at it, and rightly so. I mean, they were much heavier than than their contemporaries, and I think that is what effectively formed heavy metal, wasn't it? Their successors focused on that aspect of their music, and to a lesser extent that of Purple, Zeppelin, etc. And that became heavy metal. But Sabbath were far more varied than that. But fine. I suppose if you slightly more recent stuff, stuff for Judas Priest, I'll have to mention them again, I suppose, or Iron Maiden, things like that. Yes, I think we're going to say yes, that's heavy metal. And there is a distinction. They're not hard rock bands. I think that's a reasonable distinction, if I'm being honest. They are not. This is what Deep Purple do and what Iron Maiden do. They may be in the same field, but they're at opposite ends of it. And then we get this wonderful thing that came out in the 80s, wasn't it? The NWOBHM, the new wave of British heavy metal. Again, I think this is just more journalism. Although subsequently bands become associated with it, it takes on a life of its own. But there's Def Leppard in their early days, Saxon, Diamond Head, stuff like that. But what was it different from traditional metal? It had the punk influence, I guess. It was more stripped back, more aggressive, shorter songs. I don't know. Did they grow mullets? Was that part of it? I can't remember. But it is effectively. I mean, it's not that far away from traditional metal that I would say. Yeah, it's deserving of its own category. But again, even journalists have to earn a living, I suppose. And then we get the aforementioned thrash metal. Now, again, this was a slight step change. Your Metallicas, your Anthrax, your Slayers, your Megadeth, whoever it was, were at the forefront of this. They initially eschewed anything apart from speed, and and pounding drums. Yeah, fine. I mean, as I already said, thrash metal, it perfectly encapsulates it, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, we're now moving on to much more dubious classifications, I feel. Death metal. What is this? I mean, yeah, okay. Is this with the deep, the unlistenable vocals? People are just growling. They appear to be on the urge of vomiting. But again, we're left with the same thing: downtuned guitars, specific lyrical themes. It just doesn't have any discernible vocals. Yes, they've got a bit quicker, presumably. Um, dare one say, even less melodic. And maybe they're satanic. I don't know. I don't particularly listen to it. But again, I think it's just more of the same. It's just faster. Maybe they write shorter songs. Maybe they have the same rhythm section on every song on the album. Oh, they've got three different ones: the fast one, the slow one, and for them the mid-tempo one. But it all sounds very similar. And again, you can see where it came from. It's just every time that if we start with Black Sabbath and you get to your Judas Priest and stuff like that, it's the funnel is getting narrower. Now we got black metal. I suppose I've got to be careful what I say about this. I could get myself cancelled. So I will not be making those jokes. Somebody told me the difference between death metal and black metal is black metal is the one with the screechy vocals. I don't know. I'm prepared to be corrected on that. They go in for raw productions. Well, I don't know. Was that not true of death metal or traditional metal? Certainly, in its prime or its infancy or whatever. Yeah, treble heavy guitars, apparently, according to AI, is a feature of this. Again, is this something particularly new? Is this something particularly different? I don't know. Anti-religious lyrics. Well, Christ on a bike. That's hardly, new territory, is it? Is this just death metal with, different body paint? I don't know. Doom metal. Apparently, the defining characteristic of this is it's all of the above, but it's just glacial speed. It's so slow. Think Black Sabbath's Master of Reality, which I would have to assume, was the blueprint for this. But again, what are the traits? It's down-tuned, it's sludgy. All right, so they do it at a slower pace than thrash or death or whatever. They do it faster. If you're doom, you do it slower. Again, is there any point to this? Okay, power metal. Well, it seems almost so axiomatic, isn't it? We're not talking about chamber music. We're not talking about Chris de Burgh here. Metal is inherently powerful. That's part of its appeal and part of its point. Part of the point of it, I would have thought. Although perhaps here more operatic vocals. I don't know. We haven't yet mentioned symphonic metal, but we will. It's almost indistinguishable what I've heard of what people have been described as power metal. Halloween, that sort of thing, Blind Guardian, Dragon Force, these sort of things. I mean, what is the fucking difference? Apparently, if it's American power metal, it's purely guitar, bass and drums based, whereas European power metal incorporates keyboards. But is that really not what Iron Maiden, Sax, and Judas Priest are doing? Is that not power metal? Can you not listen, especially some of the latter day Iron Maiden stuff? Is that that little bit of proggy influence in it? Does it need a subcategory? Okay, I mean glam, or perhaps hair metal. It's far more insulting, isn't it? And literally defined by most of the practitioners of it, had huge hair. Perhaps not huge talents, but huge hair. Motley Crue, Poison back in the day, I remember, before it died out. Warrant, I think, something like that. I can't remember. I mean, I never really got into it. There was a couple of decent songs I seem to remember, but nothing that had me rushing out to buy CDs. It was just all posing, wasn't it? Hairspray. Hairspray, apart from hairspray, more important than time changes or catchy riffs or things like that. But again, is it too? It's perhaps more rock than metal in some ways. Doesn't have that naked aggression that heavy metal and its bastard offspring, especially against the thrash metal and that sort of thing. Glamour, yeah, never had that naked aggression to it, did it? But perhaps it was more rock than metal. Then call it rock. All right, speed metal. We've touched on this. Um, as far as I can discern, and I've listened to a couple of things. This is just thrash's caffeine addicted brother. Maybe we go back to even I don't know. Maybe we could go back further. Led Zeppelin's Communication Breakdown, something like that. Maybe that was the start of it. Who knows? Motorhead, Ace of Spades, or something. Exciter. What is the heavy metal maniac or something? Yeah. Again, the defining traits as listed here: breakneck speed, raw energy. It's indistinguishable from thrash, is it not? It is to me. Okay, progressive metal. Now, all right. I'll concede a point or half a point here. I suppose this is something you could say Rush started. I think, and bands such as Dream Theater, Tool, or whatever, Opeth, perhaps even. I don't know. Picked up the baton on that one. But yes, I mean there is. It's more artsy, isn't it? Shall we say? More musically. I don't want to say impressive, but musically impressive. Yeah. They're going for the more complicated compositions. Different time signatures. All those good things, rather than just the fast bit and the slow bit. This one made me laugh. Alternative metal. So what the fuck does that mean? And if something's an alternative to something, it means it's different, surely. What they used to talk about in the early 80s, wasn't it? Alternative comedy. Yes, it wasn't funny. It was occasionally, but a lot of it was just utter shit. So what is alternative metal? What does that mean? Is that not jazz? Is that not alternative? I don't know. What are they trying to say? According to AI, Alice in Chains. Well, I don't know if Miss or Mrs. Chains. Oh no, that's not Alice in Chains. Sorry, I do apologize. Alice in Chains. My mistake. System of a Down. Again, these are okay. Faith No More. I've heard more of their stuff. Yeah, it's got that. Well, they say here's an experimental edge. I don't know. It's just funk tinged to me. I don't think there's anything particularly experimental about funk. If you look at some of my Deep Purple videos, the influence of funk went a long way to ruining a perfectly good band. I don't think it's particularly experimental. Oh, well, it might be experimental. I don't know. It depends how you define that, I guess. But there's certainly nothing new about it. Again, it just seems like, to me, this is a meaningless distinction. Industrial metal. This is another one. Is this based on socio-economic background? Purely the purview of the working classes, the blue collar clientele, customer, fan. Again, when you look at the traits it gives, okay, they say here it incorporates electronic synths and aggression. That may be true. I don't know. I'll have to be honest. I don't really know. But surely didn't we cover that with, or we're about to cover that with nu metal? Isn't not the same as that? By the descriptions, I'm getting ahead of myself. It looks very similar. You probably need a sound engineer's decoder ring to tell the difference, but never mind. Oh, here's another one. Just before we get to nu metal, groove metal. Fucking that. Mid-tempo riffs you can headbang to. I mean, really. This is a defining characteristic. Mid-tempo riffs you can headbang to, and this deserves a classification of its own. I mean, come on. They list Pantera here. Don't know much about them. But okay, syncopated rhythms and heaviness. Surely that's thrash. Or am I missing something? I don't know. Okay, nu metal. Yeah. I hear lots of people talking about nu metal. First I thought it was some alloy or something, something even stronger than titanium. But no, it's yet another subgenre of what I was spent the majority of my life happily defining as hard rock and heavy metal. Apparently, this contains rap and down-tuned guitar. Well, down-tuned guitars is hardly revelatory. I mean, it's hardly deserving of special attention, is it? Okay, apparently they are given to incorporating hip-hop beats, which may well go a long way to explain the fact I've never heard any of these acts, and I never will. But again, I suppose if it's incorporating that sort of stuff, it has moved considerably from the base, hasn't it? But again, really, splitting hairs. Okay, metalcore. Screaming with chugging breakdowns. I don't know. Have we not been there 5 or 6 times already? Is this not thrash or something? It seems like the only thing that sort of death metal or doom metal or whatever the hell it was we referred to earlier is purely lyrical content. Or doom metal does it at a very slow pace, and thrash and speed metal do it at a faster pace. But if you've got a cult-based, shall we say, lyrical content, you're one, or if you haven't, you're the other sort of thing. It's wow, really. Oh, apparently no. One of the traits here are dual vocals and heavy drops. Okay. Again, but yeah, didn't we have that with deathcore? So is metalcore and deathcore? I don't know. It's again, it seems utterly indistinguishable to me. Or symphonic metal, I can kind of get on board with that one. Being I do like Nightwish, and I do see the difference there. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a nice descriptor, and it does encapsulate their music rather well, I would say. But yeah, well, all right, I'll let that one go. Here's something I never heard of: folk metal, metal with flutes and fiddles. It lists some bands here. Jachtens Kopilanis, Vodka. Oh no, the songs are, yeah. Or Ennis Ferrum's Iron. I don't know. Yeah. It links it. It says it's according to AI here, indistinguishable from Viking metal, which is another one I've never heard of. So let's explore. Viking metal is folk metal with Norse-based themes. Okay. Now, Bathory, I have heard of them at least. But again, it sounds fundamentally that it's thrash with a flute. I don't know. Pagan metal, which is apparently like folk metal. But lyrically they just focus on pre-Christian rituals. I mean, surely your lyrical content does not define the genre of music you are in. I'm a bit of a loss here. Gothic metal. Well, all right, the Gothic movement has been around for a long time, and it is quite specific. I get that. I love Gothic horror as both a literary and a cinematic form, so I get that. Typo Negative, I've never heard. Who else is Lacuna's Coil? Never heard. Paradise Lost. Well, never heard of the band. Obviously, I've read the book. But it sounds like from what they're sort of melancholy, even with female vocal. Oh well, okay, female vocal, but it's not unheard of in traditional rock or metal or whatever to have a female vocalist, is it? Hardly headline-grabbing news. But it sounds just the same doomy, gloomy shit that we've already discussed. Maybe with better lyrics and a more shaggable vocalist. I don't know. Is that worth its own subcategory of music? I don't know. All right, they move on to sludge metal, or we shall move on to sludge metal here, which is, I suppose, as the name implies, dirty, slow, and gritty. Is that doom? Or is there a difference between sludge and doom? Doesn't seem to be really, not on the face of it, not based on those adjectives. But again, I've never heard of any stoner metal, which is apparently a sludge metal with a psychedelic twist. Again, I don't know. Queens of the Stone Age, it mentions. Again, I've no idea. But again, fuzzy bass and desert vibes and heavy riffs. Yeah, cut and paste, isn't it? These descriptions, one or the other. Okay, the year 24. And thank God I stopped it at 24. Drone metal. Well, it sort of fly through the air, does it? Remote control or pre-programmed or something like that. It's particularly it's so slow. It's particularly asleep. Okay. Well, all right, fair enough. I mean, but again, just is that a genre or a legitimate subgenre of something? Because whether they're doing it slowly or fast, or mid-tempo, or with flutes or without flutes, or with symphonic elements or not, it is guitar riff based metal. Most of this, I don't think any of these subcategories apply to the hard rock root branch, shall we say. These are all metal derivatives. Well, I mean, yeah, okay. Apparently, there's another 20 to go, and probably the way things are, since I've started recording this, another couple have been invented. You can just imagine what's coming next, can't you? Proctological metal, deep, dark, and ominous. They'd really have to down tune that, wouldn't they? Very much bottom end centric. What about Welsh close harmony singing metal? Now there's one, isn't there? Glorious mishap of sheep herding vocals and metal mayhem. I don't know. When they're playing live, instead of having a backdrop of dancing naked girls or backing singers, they have a crowd of yokels indulging in cheese rolling or something. I really don't know. I mean, I'm being facetious here, obviously. But again, I said, how many legitimately, how many did I miss? And do you get my point? These things, the majority of these things are utterly indistinguishable from the others. And I know I have had disagreements with people in the past who swear by some of these. Well, not all of them, I'll admit. But I have to say, to normal ears, these are the same riffs, the same growls, or the same shrieks, the same lyrical content, same tempos, all these sort of things. I don't care what genre they have to put it. They decide to call it. It's, I don't know. Yeah, I think we're splitting hairs a little bit. Splitting hairs on a bald man's head, I suppose, would be a better way of describing it. And yes, I know from my own experience, when I mislabeled somebody's second favorite band or something, and you think I'd insulted their grandmother's cooking. Well, why do we do this? Well, why do we do this? And it's not just in music. I mean, it happens in all forms of life, unfortunately. But I sometimes I'm of the opinion that people do this. They seek out these special categories or categorizations or identifiers, shall we say, to gain attention where they perhaps would not gain attention on a level playing field, if you know what I mean. Something akin to the classic pre-internet lie rock bands occasionally used to indulge in. Oh, no, we're huge in Japan because nobody can fucking check. I mean, think of it this way. Take a golf professional, for example. He's a professional, plays on the PGA Tour, but fairly mediocre. Never won anything, hardly ever finishes in the top 10 of tournaments. But once upon a time, his ball got lodged in a tree and he just played some miraculous recovery shot out of the tree and, I don't know, knocked it in the hole for all I care. So what does he do? He rebrands himself. I'm the PGA Tour's best player out of a tree. He's still the same fucker he was before, but now he's rebranded himself, hasn't he? As long as, obviously, it's an oak tree or a pine tree. If it happens to be a palm tree, he's utterly fucked. And we've already got another category being developed as we're talking. You get my point, I hope. I mean, I know for a fact, when I'm not inflicting pain on YouTube viewers, I'm inflicting pain on the reading public. And I have published a couple of books. The links are in the description. On Black Sabbath, the one I'm about to, one that's relevant to what I'm about to say, is the first book I wrote, where I reappraised Ronnie James Dio's impact on the band. Now, for a time, and I know because I took a screenshot of it, I was on the Amazon bestseller list in the top 20. Now, an attractive young girl at the bar and asks me what I do for a living. I'll say I'm an author, and she'll look at me. So no, but I've been in the Amazon top 20 bestseller list, and it would not, on the face of it, be a complete lie. However, it would be very misleading and very disingenuous of me, because I was not in the top 20 of the Amazon, worldwide book bestseller list. I was in entertainment, music, blah 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 blah, metal, rock, blah blah, biography or something. I was in the 6th, 7th, perhaps even 8th subcategory in the top 20, briefly. A week later, I was in the 40s, but I was briefly in the top 20. Which actually says a lot, because I know, because I get the royalty statements, the royalty payments, and the sales reports. I know how many copies I'd sold. And I was in the top 20. It does not make me a runaway success. Trust me, it doesn't. But again, because if I so wish, I could take the fact, which is a fact, I was in the Amazon bestseller top 20 list. And I can reinvent myself so much. I can, portray myself as being more successful than I am. And I think that's a lot of, goes a long way to explain why people insist on creating these utterly pointless and, for my money, increasingly meaningless subgenres of music, where 2 or 3, as I said in the beginning, are more than sufficient. Well, there you have it. I would say, perhaps, that subdividing the pointless is the noblest waste of the human intellect. And on a less philosophical point, if your band needs 4 hyphens to describe its music, it's probably a load of shit anyway. On that note, as I said, the links to my book, should anybody be interested, and maybe get me back in the top 20. Yes, the links are in the description below. And until next time, I thank you for your indulgence. I wish you well, and Maçhonquèrre.